so it's Shelly with the Farm with the Red Door, and today Hans and I are going to shoot a video together. We are going to show you how to build an instant garden in just a few hours, very little money. You don't need much space, you don't need a lot of resources. And today, with all the inflation that's happening, all the prices are going up on everything, we are all feeling it. And there's a lot of these areas that we cannot control. But food is one area that you can do something to help bring your food budget down. And growing a garden is kind of the hot topic for everybody. Everybody's really interested in maybe getting some food into the ground and supplying some of their own grocery list. And a lot of people don't have any experience with it. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know how to even start. And a lot of people don't have a lot of space. And a lot of people don't have a lot of money or time. And we're trying to beat the grocery store prices, so we don't want this to cost a lot of money. And a lot of us hold down full-time jobs and we don't have a lot of time to invest in this. And so this instant garden, will take you from ground level. It could just be a spot in your yard. It could be a little portion of your, even your grass, and you can turn it into whatever size of a garden you want. If you're just a single person, you can keep it pretty small, just enough for you, or you can expand it to feed your entire family. So you can take the concept of what we're gonna do and you can make it into any size that you would like, and we're gonna take you from the ground up, and you will know exactly how to move forward in getting a garden started. We're following the lasagna style. It's going to layer upon layer upon layer. We're going to explain each one of those layers to you and why you want to do it and what is the cheapest way you can get those layers. And in the end, you're going to have a very intensive growing, a lot of greens. We're going to be doing a lot of salad greens because you're going to be able to get the most produce for your space, intensively growing a lot of leafy greens. If you've been following Hans and I on our channel, you will know that at our property we have a lot of garden beds. We have a great big huge garden that's our preservation garden where we grow a year's worth of different crops, and then we have a kitchen garden that's down closer to my kitchen with a lot of fresh eating. And so to be able to shoot this tutorial for you, we didn't want to start in one of our garden beds because that's already been prepared. We've already built up the soil and you're going to be missing a lot of steps. We want to start from ground level to just a field of weeds, or if you live in the city and you have like manicured grass and you want to take a little portion of that and turn it into a garden, that will work too. So we are actually, our daughter lives next door, and we are actually going to put this instant garden in for them, and that way we can shoot it because this space is, nothing's ever been done with it, and so we can start from the ground up. So you're going to be really surprised to see just how much vegetables that you can get out of this garden. And so the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to level this down. We're just going to, you can mow it or you can weed whip it. We've got our weed whacker, and we're just going to mow the bed that we're going to plant. And you want to get it as close to the ground as possible. So if you're using a lawnmower, just adjust it to where you can get it as close to the ground. You don't want to dig it up. You want to leave all the roots intact, but just get it as close to the ground as possible. So we're going to get started with that step. All right, so we've got our grass cut down pretty short, and now we are going to want to rake all of those grass clippings back into the garden site. Do not get rid of those grass clippings. those are going to bring a lot of great organic matter into your garden bed, and it's really going to help get some nitrogen in there from the green grass. So just rake all the clippings back in, spread it out evenly, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now we're going to shape our garden bed. When shaping the bed, you're going to want to keep in mind that you do not want to reach any more than 24 to 30 inches at the max. Now, if you can access the rows from all sides, like we're going to be able to do here, you can have a 4-foot wide row because you would be able to access it from the back as well as the front. But if you are against a fence or a wall, you're going to want to keep it to that 30 inches at the max. The next step to this process is we are going to amend the soil. We do want to get some more organic matter down here on the ground. So getting more nitrogen into this bed is key. We have a lot of those grass clippings down there, but that's just the start. We're going to have another great source of organic material, and that is going to be your food waste. If you've been collecting old produce and eggshells and coffee grounds, tea bags, whatever you have, just collect it and then just lay it out on top of those grass clippings. So here's a little tip for you. If you do not have a lot of kitchen scraps, you can actually get them from the grocery store. As we were going to shoot this tutorial, I realized that I had thrown all of my kitchen scraps to the chickens and I didn't have anything to put on this bed. So when I went to the grocery store, I was at Whole Foods, and I got there about the time that they were taking a lot of the old produce off of the shelves and replacing it with fresh, and they had big, huge garbage cans that they were dumping everything in, and it was good produce. And I asked them what they did with it, and they said a lot of people come and get it for starting gardens. So if you don't have a lot of kitchen scraps, go ahead and take a trip to the grocery store or call them and ask them if you can pick up some of their leftover produce, and they will be more than happy to get it to you. If you stop with that, with amending the soil, that's actually a really good start to have those grass clippings and all those kitchen scraps. That's a really good deal. But you can add another layer on top of this. The more we can add into it, the better it's going to be. So the next layer that you could add would be a layer of coffee grounds. Now, if you don't have coffee grounds, you can actually go to the coffee shop, any coffee stops, and if you ask them, they will hold them back, and you can go and pick up a big bucket of coffee grounds to put into your garden bed. I would just suggest to try and stick with organic because they do use a lot of chemicals and preservatives when they are processing the coffee beans. So if you can stick to organic, that would be wonderful. But these coffee grounds are going to add a really another awesome layer of matter into our garden. These coffee grounds, they're another great nitrogen source for your soil. Another thing that you could add into the soil, into this garden plot, would be eggshells. Now, you know, we want to keep this really easy and really simple. We don't want to take a lot of time on this. So as you can see, we've just tossed our eggshells straight down onto the plot. But if you have time and you would like to, you can actually dry those out. You can take the eggshells as you use them and you can line them up on a cookie sheet and stick them in the oven at a really low temperature, and it will actually dry them out. You can throw them all into your blender and you can process them, and they will turn into dirt. Basically, it'll be the consistency of dirt, and then you can go ahead and sprinkle those into your garden plot. Now, it is not totally necessary to do this if you're short on time and you just want to get it done. You can do just as we've done and just add them. They will break down, but anything that you add into the garden, if it's whole, it's going to take time to break down. A lot of the cabbage leaves that we added, we just threw them in whole because they will break down. But if you cut them, just all the cut sides, it's just going to be that much quicker that these can actually break down if you cut them up. So it would be the same thing. The shells will take a lot longer to break down left whole. So if you want to speed things up, then go ahead and dry them and process them and sprinkle them as well as the coffee grounds over your garden plot. All right, so we have a really great start. We have added a lot of organic matter to this plot and we still have not spent any money. It's been completely free to this point. So now we're going to move on to the next step. Now the next layer that we're going to put on our garden plot is some manure. If you have access to animal manure, that is another great nitrogen source, as well as getting a lot more organic matter down here. You can use chicken waste, rabbit, cows, goats, that's great. And if you don't have an access to anything personally, then possibly check with your neighbors. A lot of people, if they have animals, they would probably be more than happy to give you some manure. All right, so we now have a great base of organic material and nitrogen-rich material. This is going to really kickstart the decomposition process going on at that original soil level. It's going to bring in the soil biology, all the worms, all the bacteria, the fungal communities. Good soil consists of all of that, and your plants are going to be a lot healthier if you can build up the biology in your soil. Those communities are actually going to loosen the soil down below to help your garden grow. All right, so the next step is that you're going to want to give this a really good watering. Once we put the next layer on top of this, which is going to be cardboard, it's going to be hard for the water to get down below the cardboard. And so before we do that, we're going to really want to give this bed a really deep soaking to help it out. And then we're going to top it with our layer of cardboard. Make sure that the hose you're using has a nice soft spray. You're not going to want to be digging holes through your garden as you're watering it. And as you keep adding layers, and once you plant your seeds, it's really, really important that your water source is just a gentle mist, not something that's going to just tear holes throughout your rows. All right, so now that our bed has gotten a really good soaking, you're just going to want to take a rake and just make sure everything is as smooth as possible before we lay the cardboard out. The next step is we are going to lay down cardboard. Make sure that when you get your cardboard to use, you want to have non-glossy cardboard, and you want to make sure that there are no pieces of tape on it. So pull all the tape, and you don't want that toxic tape in your garden. So we're going to lay down 2 layers of cardboard. Now, if you can soak your cardboard beforehand, that would be really helpful. If you had a big barrel or something, you could just put the cardboard in and just let it soak for a while. That would be a lot easier. If you lay it down dry, you're going to be spending a lot of time watering the cardboard down because you want it to become really, really wet. We did soak it some with the hose, but we just didn't have time to soak it as much as we would like to. So we're going to have to soak it pretty heavily once we lay it down. We're going to use a tape measure here, and we're going to measure the cardboard. We're going to fold it or cut it or turn it under to make it that perfect 30-inch row. Now on this garden plot, we're actually going to go a bit bigger because we can access it from all sides. But if you're up against a wall, like I was saying, or a fence, you're not going to want to go bigger than 30 inches. So just whatever you're doing, just measure the cardboard and make it that perfect size garden plot. So you're going to want to lay down 1 layer of cardboard, and then you're going to want to really, really soak it. And then lay a second layer of cardboard and soak it again. Now, our cardboard was pretty wet, the first layer, and so we just went ahead and laid that first layer down, and then we put our second layer on top, and he's kind of taken the hose and he can stick it underneath and just soak that cardboard. Both layers need to be pretty saturated. That's really going to help it begin to break down. It's going to take a lot longer if your cardboard is really dry. Now this cardboard is going to give you some extra carbon and material for all of that life in your soil. And it's also going to add a really nice layer to guarantee that the grass that this plot started with is not going to grow up into your garden. It's just going to smother it. So it's kind of a dual purpose. So we now have 2 layers of cardboard with a really good watering on each layer. And we're going to make sure that the seams of the cardboard overlap each other. So that's really going to suppress any weed growth. So I'm just going to stress one more time that you really, really want to water this cardboard. It needs to be very, very saturated. A lot of people like to do this method, not for an instant garden. They want to do this and then put it to rest over the winter, and then come spring their garden bed will be ready to go. So if you're looking to do something like that, then you don't really need to worry about watering the cardboard and saturating it so much. You could just lay the cardboard down and stop at that point and just cover it with a really heavy layer of mulch, maybe 6 to 8 inches. Cover the whole thing up and just let it rest. A lot of people will do this in the fall and it will rest all winter long and it will break down, and come spring they have an instant garden ready to go. So whether you're going to build an instant garden and enjoy the produce right now, or you're preparing for something that you're going to use in the future, then you know, it works either way. So just go ahead and cover it with mulch and just let it be, and you'll have a bed waiting for you in the spring. For us, we want an instant garden, so we don't want to wait for all of this to get broken down over a month's time. That's why we put a lot of water, and now we're going to cover this with several inches of topsoil. So this topsoil, this may be the first thing that you may have to purchase. So far you haven't spent any money on this garden plot, but if you do have to spend money at this point, this is going to be returned to you hundredfold. You're going to get so much produce from this garden that it's going to more than pay for the topsoil that you had to purchase. So since we're going to be growing salad greens, we're going to put 3 to 4 inches of topsoil on this. This is really going to give our seeds something to grow in. We are going to be growing from seeds. I'm not going to be having starts out here because we really, really want to grow intensively in this garden. And using starts, plants that are already a couple inches tall, that's really going to cut down on the amount of abundance that this garden can actually give you. Now we like to take the back side of the rake to smooth this. Now before you move on from this step, you're going to want to stick your finger into the soil and make sure that it is damp all the way down to the cardboard. You don't want it to be muddy, but you do want to make sure it's damp all the way down. If the water sits on top and it doesn't sink in, it's too much water. But if you can feel down to that cardboard and you feel any dryness, you really need to continue to soak this. Once the water starts pooling up on top, then it has definitely enough water and you need to stop at that point. Next step is optional. We have some pretty amazing soil built up here, but the more nutrition that you can add to the soil, the better your garden's gonna do. We are gonna cover everything with a really good quality compost. If you find that you have super depleted soil, or it's just your basic soil, which when you're just getting started, you may find that, then you're gonna wanna put a couple inches of compost on top. We're gonna add about 1 inch or 2 to this bed. And this is going to add a lot right under those seeds. We're going to plant the seeds right into this layer here. Now once this compost has been applied, you're going to want to smooth it out really nice. And once again, you can use the back side of a rake to do that. So we're just going to keep working, filling this in. Get Eva, help us out here.
Did it go in your face?
So we now have a fantastic instant garden bed, and you're going to want to add a good layer of water over all of this, and then we're going to be ready to plant our seeds.
Put water everywhere, all the way over.
So in this garden bed, like I mentioned, we're going to be growing a lot of leafy greens in our garden bed. And we're going to plant them microgreen style. This means that we're going to be using a lot of seeds. And as they grow up, we're going to thin them and use them as microgreens. We'll be thinning out every other row. we're going to grow it quite intensively. So we'll be harvesting row 1 when they hit microgreen size, and then we'll let row 2 grow to be about 2 to 3 inches. And once they hit the 2 to 3 inch mark, then we'll be able to harvest those, and they're just going to be really fresh, small greens. And that third row we're going to allow to become full size. And so you're going to constantly be having fresh greens coming out of the garden. And as soon as you harvest a row, like if you take that first row and you have the microgreens, then immediately you can drop some more seeds in that row, and then you can move to row 2 and eat them a little bigger. And once you've eaten that row, move to row 3 and make sure you drop seeds in row 2. So you're constantly doing succession planting, and then this way you will have greens all summer long, whether you're eating them at the baby stage or the very young stage or the full mature stage. So what we like to do, we like to prepare our rows with a dowel. We usually tend to get the handle of our rake, and that works really, really well. So you take the handle and you're just going to press it into the soil. You're going to be making the perfect row for your seeds. And as you can see, this is making a perfect little trough to put your seeds in, because the trough is going to be a bit compressed from pressing down with the rake handle, and that's going to hold just the perfect amount of water. And this moisture is what's going to keep the seeds moist while you're waiting for them to germinate. Once we plant our seeds, we're only going to put about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of soil on top of those seeds. So it's going to be a very, very thin layer on top of your seeds, and it will dry out a lot faster. And so slightly compressing your rows and creating a trough to hold the water, that's really, really going to benefit your seeds. So as you can see, he laid the tape measure out here, and he made his rows every 3 to 4 inches apart. And so like I was saying, you're going to harvest this row and eat them, and then you'll move to the next one and the next one. So it's going to be succession planting. So as you move through here, you'll just be eating, harvesting, and replanting. Now we did leave this whole space here because Katie wanted to be able to grow some peppers and maybe a few additional stuff, and so this is plenty of rows of fresh greens. This is going to be a lot for just a family of 2 and a little baby. So we're going to leave the lettuce here, and so you can do that. You can, grow your beds and divide it up on how what you're planning on growing in your bed. Now I've got a really fun variety of lettuce in here. I went through all of my packets of lettuce, and this was just a mixture of like a romaine and a leafy red lettuce, and then I had a few other, the packages were almost empty, so I actually just kind of tossed them in here. So this is actually going to be kind of a surprise mixture, and as it's growing, Katie will have just a really nice assortment of leafy lettuce. We're not doing any head lettuce because you just get one head and it really takes up a lot of your garden row. When you've got this leafy lettuce and you grow it intensively and you put a lot of seeds in there, it's going to actually be very crowded, and it's going to cause that head of lettuce to go straight up with the next one pushing it up, and it's going to keep the leaves from falling down into the dirt. So you're just going to have this nice long row of lettuce that is everything is just perfectly upright. It's so smashed in there, and you can just harvest the lettuce. When we have done this with the succession planting and the intensive amount of seeds going into one spot, we don't even have to wash our lettuce. You just get, because it's not laying down in the dirt, the head right next to it is just keeping it up nice and upright. So it's such a great idea to plant this intensively. It's not just like one seed every whatever it says on the package. We just take them and we just sprinkle them real thick in there, because we're gonna thin it and pull them out and eat them young, and it's just gonna keep everything very, very clean. Sprinkle those seeds in pretty thick, and as you can see, this is why you only want your bed to be 30 inches wide. If you've got a wall or a gate or a fence behind it, you're going to have to be able to reach from the front of your garden all the way to the end of the row. But on our garden, we can reach it, access it from all sides. So you're going to want to be able to reach the middle and plant your seeds You just don't want your rows to be too long that you can't reach the middle. Now, the idea of succession planting, you're going to be harvesting and replanting these rows all summer long. And so the plant is going to use up a lot of the nutrients in your soil. So you are going to want to amend your soil with nutrients and water. So every time you harvest a row and replant it, you are going to want to make sure that you add some more amendments to the soil for each row as it's growing. Oh, that didn't make it in the row. That's going to be interesting.
Oh, good job.
Good job, Eva.
Oh my gosh.
She's just throwing them.
We're going to have one dense salad bed.
The goal is to keep the seeds in the troughs, but if you have kids, you're going to find that you have a lot more seeds that don't make it in the trough.
Yay!
Yay!
That's so good.
Maybe buy an extra couple packages of seeds. Once your seeds are sown, you're going to want to cover them up with a very light layer of compost. We like to use a sifted compost. This is going to make it a lot more light and airy, and this is really going to help your seeds when they're trying to come up. So we like to cover them with about 1/8 to 1/4 inch of this compost. A lot of seed packets, they're going to say to lightly dust, but we have found that using 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch really helps for better germination. And so now since we only put lettuce in this bed and we're planning on growing it intensively, as it's growing, you can actually come out here and you can cut the entire head off with some scissors, but leave maybe 1 inch behind, and that lettuce will regrow. So if you're, we were talking about harvesting the entire thing and then you're going to resow some seed. Some of this seed, if you would like, just chop it off, leave 1 inch behind, and it will resprout and it will grow another couple of times. So as you can see, that eating these as microgreens and then as the 2 to 3 inches, and then cutting them off once they hit that full head and leaving a little bit of it behind and letting it resprout, you can see just how much you can get out of a garden. It is just an incredible amount of greens that you can get in this very, very small bed. Now you can really plant anything in this bed. I mean, you could put squash, beans, tomatoes, really anything, but remember that it's going to take time for those layers, those cardboard layers. It's really going to take time for them to break down. And some of those deeper rooted crops, they need to get down a lot lower than the lettuce needs to. And so I really suggest that in the first year, you just stick to leafy greens because they aren't deep rooted. They don't need to get really, really deep. And then maybe next season, once the cardboard has broken down, you can plant some of those other crops that need to go deeper. You could plant those in future years. So we always start a bed out with leafy greens first, allow the soil to break down, and then we might come in the following year with, something like squash or beans or even corn. All right, so now that your seeds are planted and covered up, you're going to want to top it off. The finishing touch is to water them, and you're going to want a really light mist, because if the water droplets are too big, they're going to put gouges and it's going to disturb the seeds. So you just want a nice mist. Now you're going to want to water these beds. Just watch the tops of them. If they start to pool up, the water just pools and sits there, you know that you've got enough water and you need to stop. But if it keeps soaking in, then just very lightly add some more water on the top and just keep watching for it to pool up. So in the beginning, while you're waiting for these seeds to sprout, you're going to want to water them 2 to 3 times a day. You don't want the soil to dry out because those seeds really need that moisture to be able to germinate. So just, keep an eye on them. If it's a really breezy day, then you know that those beds are probably going to dry out a lot faster. If it's not raining, if you get a nice rain, then you don't have to water them. But just keep in mind that those seeds need moisture to germinate. So it could be 2 to 3 times a day until they sprout. So as those seeds are just trying to send root down, just try to mimic what nature does, the spring rains, the light spring rains. Just mimic that as you're waiting. And so there you have it. You have an instant bed. That only took a couple hours, and the price, it really didn't cost much. A lot of that you already had, or you could borrow from friends or get it free, and you purchased your seeds, but it really doesn't cost that much money, and you are going to have an intensive amount of greens all throughout the summer. Well, we hope that you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions for us, go ahead and leave them in the comments box below, and we will get an answer to you as soon as possible. If you enjoyed this and you found it helpful, we would love it if you gave us a thumbs up. And if you have a friend, someone that you know that this might help, go ahead and send it. Share it with them so that they can get an instant garden in as well. If you would like to get more content like this, go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell so that you'll be notified every time we bring content to our channel. So we hope that you enjoyed that, and you're going to go and put yourself in an instant garden, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye. Say bye. Say bye.